At Christmas dinner, my fiancé threw a glass of wine at my daughter because she'd looked at her wrong. My daughter sat perfectly still, didn't move, didn't cry. That stillness, her mom said, she provoked her. I smiled, stood up calmly, and called my lawyer on speaker. Everything is exactly as we discussed. You can begin. 20 minutes later, a car arrived at the house. She looked at me like I was garbage, Vanessa said, swirling red wine in her glass as if she were making conversation instead of picking a fight with a child. Honestly, Oliver, your daughter needs to learn respect. The dining room went still. Christmas dinner at my parents' house always looked better than it felt. The table was set with my mother's good china, silver candle holders, and a centerpiece made of pine branches and dried oranges. Ham steamed on one end, sweet potatoes on the other. And the tree in the next room glowed warmly enough to fool an outsider into thinking this was a safe place. It wasn't. My daughter Emma sat halfway down the table in a dark green sweater she'd chosen because she said it made her feel grown up. She was 9 years old, smart, careful, quiet, in the way children become quiet when they learn too early that adults can be cruel and still expect gratitude. She didn't do anything, I said. Vanessa gave me that smile I had once mistaken for composure. That's the point. She sits there staring. She makes everybody uncomfortable and then acts innocent. My mother lowered her fork and sighed as if she were exhausted by a burden she'd carried with grace for years. Oliver, she has been difficult all evening. Difficult. That word had been used on me my entire childhood. In our family, difficult meant you had noticed unfairness and hadn't smiled through it. Emma didn't look up. She was staring at her plate, hands folded in her lap, shoulders stiff. My father carved another slice of ham. A child shouldn't be allowed to set the tone in a room full of adults. Across from me, my younger brother Luke smirked into his drink. Rachel, my ex-wife, Emma's mother, shifted in her chair, but said nothing. She had arrived late, tense, already looking for the safest possible place to stand if trouble started. Vanessa leaned toward Emma. You know exactly what you're doing. Emma finally lifted her eyes. That was it. Just one look. No attitude, no words. Just a little girl looking at an adult who had decided she needed an enemy and had chosen the smallest person in the room. Vanessa's face hardened. She provoked me. Then she threw the wine. It hit Emma across the cheek and shoulder, splashing her sweater, the tablecloth, and the silver centerpiece. Red dripped down the fabric and onto her lap. Emma didn't scream, didn't wipe her face, didn't cry. She just froze. That stillness hit me harder than the wine ever could have. It was the stillness of a child who had already learned that if something bad happens, the adults around her might explain it instead of stopping it. And Rachel looked at her own daughter and said flatly, she probably pushed her to it. That was the moment the night ended for me. Not with yelling, not with shock, with clarity. I stood up calmly. My father snapped, sit down. I smiled. That smile unsettled them more than anger would have. Anger meant there was still an argument to win. Calm meant I was done arguing. I took out my phone, called my lawyer, and put him on speaker. Vanessa laughed. Oh my God, are you serious? Greg answered on the second ring. Greg Hale. I looked at Emma, not Vanessa. Everything is exactly as we discussed, I said. You can begin. Greg didn't hesitate. Understood. The driver is on the way. Notices are ready. Luke lowered his glass. What driver? My mother went pale. Oliver, don't make a scene on Christmas. I looked at her. The scene, I said, already happened. I ended the call and set the phone beside my plate. Emma finally looked up at me, her face wet with wine, eyes wide but dry. You're okay, I told her. It was the only lie I said that night. Because 20 minutes later, when headlights swept across the front window and a black car pulled into the driveway, everyone at that table was going to learn that I had not come to Christmas dinner hoping for peace. I had come prepared to end something for good. People think betrayal begins with one huge act. It usually doesn't. It starts with favors. Money transferred quickly, bills covered just this once. Family emergencies that somehow always become your responsibility because you're the dependable one. My name is Oliver Mercer. I'm 38 and I own a small craft brewery outside Indianapolis. Brewing sounds romantic until you actually do it. It's hot floors, busted hoses, grain dust in your lungs, tanks that don't care if it's your daughter's birthday, distributors who delay payments, and payroll that never, ever waits. I built Mercer Run Brewing from almost nothing after my divorce. A used brewhouse, a bad loan, and more stubbornness than sense. For years, I worked like a man being chased. And when the brewery finally became stable, my family noticed. My father noticed first. Harold Mercer never asked for help like he was asking a favor. He framed it like duty. Your mother shouldn't worry about bills at her age. A son who's doing well takes care of his people. Family doesn't let family sink. My mother, Diane, was softer, but worse. She could dress manipulation and concern so well you almost thanked her for it. Your father is too proud to ask. Your brother just needs a little breathing room. It would mean so much if you stepped in. My younger brother Luke had turned a little breathing room into a lifestyle. Bad investments, credit card messes, truck payments, one business opportunity after another. I covered more than I should have, because every time I tried not to, I felt like the bad son, the selfish brother, the one who had escaped and now owed rent for leaving. Rachel used to tell me, "You don't help your family. You subsidize them." I told her she was exaggerating. She wasn't. Our marriage didn't fail only because of my family, but they helped. Rachel got tired of watching me hand my energy, money, and peace to people who treated all three like recurring monthly benefits. After the divorce, we managed a tense sort of co-parenting. Rachel loved Emma, but love wasn't the same thing as courage. When conflict showed up, Rachel's instinct was always to minimize it, smooth it over, and survive it. Then I met Vanessa. She worked in luxury real estate and wore confidence like perfume. The first time we talked, she said she liked men who built real things. My family loved her immediately. She praised my mother's hosting, laughed at my father's stories, and somehow made Luke feel clever without giving him anything real. My father called her polished. My mother called her strong. I called her the woman I wanted to marry. At first, she was good with Emma. Not overly sweet, not fake in a way I could easily spot, just measured. Careful. Then the comments started. "She's very quiet around me. She watches me in a strange way. She seems possessive of you. Do you think Rachel encourages that?" I defended Emma. Vanessa backed off. Then the next week, she'd return with a new angle. She ignored me. She rolled her eyes. She knows how to make herself look wounded. The first time Vanessa called my daughter manipulative, I should have ended it. Instead, I explained Emma's personality, her shyness, the divorce, the adjustments. I negotiated with a problem that wasn't confusion at all. Vanessa understood Emma perfectly. She understood that Emma saw through her. One Saturday, after Vanessa had spent the afternoon at my house, Emma asked if Vanessa was going to be there every weekend now. I said, maybe. Emma stood in the kitchen doorway, small and serious, and said, "She's different when you leave the room." I dried my hands and turned to her. "Different how?" Emma shrugged too quickly. "She says I make things hard. She says, grown-up relationships are fragile. I remember feeling cold all over, then doing the worst possible thing, telling myself Vanessa was insecure, not cruel. That's how people like me fail our kids. Not all at once, in pieces. Through delay, through explanation, through hoping ugliness is just awkwardness in better clothes." Then the money started. Vanessa had expensive problems and endless temporary crises. Condo assessment, delayed commission, her mother's dental bill, a client who backed out. She'd always repay me next week, after closing, after the wire hit, after one more thing. Then Marisol, my accountant, who trusted numbers more than people and was usually right too, called me into the office above the brewery. She spread out the statements and tapped 6 transfers. "Tell me you approved these." I hadn't. A little under $30,000 had been moved out of one of my operating accounts over 3 months. The transaction labels were vague enough to blend in. Maintenance reserve, vendor hold, distribution adjustment. My stomach dropped. The secondary access token was used, Marisol said. Only a handful of people had legitimate access. Vanessa was not one of them, but she had used my laptop. She knew my habits. She knew where I kept the backup token because once she'd mocked me for writing important codes in a notebook, like an old man. You think it was her? Marisol asked. Yes, I said. When I confronted Vanessa, she didn't look guilty. She looked inconvenienced. I moved money, she said. I didn't steal it. You took it from my business. We were building a future. With brewery operating cash, she crossed her arms. You are so dramatic when it comes to money. That sentence told me everything I needed to know about the difference between us. I respected money because I knew what it cost. She respected access. I asked her to leave. By the next day, my mother was telling me I was overreacting over shared finances between people who are about to marry. My father called it a misunderstanding. Luke actually laughed and said, if she's your fiancée, what's the difference whose account it came from? That was when I stopped defending myself and started documenting. Marisol helped me secure the accounts quietly. Greg, my lawyer, told me not to warn anyone, so I listened and I watched. And once I stopped arguing, they got careless. I found screenshots Vanessa had emailed herself from my laptop. Account balances, recovery prompts, business summaries. I found texts between Vanessa and her mother Denise, mocking Emma's silent little statue act. Then, my cousin Jenna sent me screenshots from a family group chat I hadn't even known existed. Vanessa, how do you handle a child who uses silence to control the room? Denise, ignore it. Don't reward passive-aggressive behavior. Luke, kid knows the act works. LOL. My mother, Oliver, has always had a blind spot where guilt is concerned. Someone wrote, boarding school. My mother reacted with a thumbs up. I stared at that screenshot until the screen dimmed. The same evening, Emma came back from a short visit to my parents' house, quieter than usual. During dinner, she asked, do I make people not want to be around me? I put my fork down. Who said that? No one. Emma. She twisted her napkin. Grandma said some girls don't know how to share their dads, and that if I keep making things tense, people will get tired of me. I felt something in me turn hard and cold. I knelt beside her chair and said, listen to me. None of this is your fault. Adults are supposed to know how to behave around children. You do not carry that job. She looked at me like she wanted to believe me, but had already learned adults could mean well and still fail you. A few days later, Vanessa posted a photo from a holiday charity event. She looked elegant. I looked tired. The caption said, loving someone means loving them through complicated family dynamics too. Some children need extra patience, structure, and grace. The comments filled with praise. My mother shared it. Luke commented, not all heroes wear capes. Rachel called furious, not because Emma had been insulted, but because she thought people might assume the complicated family dynamics line referred to her. That told me exactly how alone my daughter had been. Then I found the audio. Vanessa used voice notes constantly. One night, after borrowing my tablet, her cloud cache synced before she removed herself. Buried in the files were 3 messages she had sent Denise. In one, Vanessa laughed and said, Emma does that frozen little girl thing because men panic when kids look breakable. It's manipulative as hell. In another, once we're married, Oliver's priorities will change. The kid can sulk at Rachel's. In the third, Denise asked if she thought anyone would notice how tense Emma seemed around her. Vanessa answered, cheerful and light, kids adjust, or they get sidelined. Same difference. I played that message 4 times. Then I called Greg. He reviewed the transfers, the screenshots, the audio, the post, everything. You're done with her, he said. Yes. And your family? I looked through the office window at the brewery floor below me. Steam, steel, work. Honest things. I'm done with anyone who helped. So, we made a plan. Greg prepared notices. Marisol locked down every business system. A locksmith stood by for my house. A driver was arranged to get Emma and me out fast if the confrontation happened where I expected it would. I printed the financial records, the screenshots, transcripts of the audio. Everything. I put it all in a plain red folder. I slipped the backup drive into my coat pocket. Then my father called and ordered me to bring Emma to Christmas dinner. I said yes. Not because I wanted peace, because there comes a point when the only way to end a lie is to let it speak in full and then put the truth on the table. My parents' house looked warm from the outside. White lights on the porch. Wreath on the door. Snow caught in the shrubs. Inside, it smelled like ham, cinnamon, and old resentment. Vanessa came downstairs last, wearing cream silk and a perfect smile. "Merry Christmas," she said, kissing my cheek. I stepped back, she noticed. Dinner started with small cuts. Vanessa corrected how Emma held her fork. My mother told her to answer more cheerfully. Luke asked if she was doing the silent treatment thing again. Denise said some girls learned early how to control a room by playing delicate. Every time I redirected, another remark followed. Halfway through the meal, my father lifted his glass. "To family," he said. "The people who stay loyal, even when some make that difficult." Luke grinned. Emma looked at her plate. Vanessa noticed and pounced. "There," she said. "That look again." I turned. "What look?" "The one where she acts superior, like she's judging everyone." "She's eating. She's performing," Rachel muttered. "She does shut down like that." Emma's shoulders tightened. I said, "Enough." Vanessa smiled thinly. "When are we allowed to tell the truth?" Everybody tiptoes around her because she knows how to play fragile. Emma looked up at her. Vanessa stood. "Don't look at me like that." Then she threw the wine. The red splash hit Emma's face and chest. The room froze. Emma didn't move. That stillness. Again. Not surprise, survival. And Rachel said she probably pushed her to it. I stood up. My father barked, "Sit down." I smiled, took out my phone, and called Greg on speaker. Vanessa laughed. "You cannot be serious," Greg answered. "Hale speaking." "Everything is exactly as we discussed," I said. "You can begin." "Understood," he replied. "The driver is en route. The locksmith has been notified. Documents are finalized." I ended the call and set the phone down. Then I pulled the red folder from my coat and placed it on the table. "No more guessing," I said. "Let's do facts." I slid the transfer records toward Vanessa. $29,000, nearly, moved out of my business account without authorization. "We were engaged," she said. "You stole from my brewery. I borrowed, with payroll approaching." Luke leaned in and I handed him the access logs. Her device. Her login trail. His smirk disappeared. "My mother, this is cruel." I turned and pushed the chat screenshots toward her. The family messages. The thumbs up. The comment about boarding school. The remarks about Emma making things tense. Rachel snatched a page and read. Vanessa crossed her arms. "Private venting is not abuse." "About a 9-year-old child?" I asked. Denise said, "Emma is not innocent." "No," I said, "she's a child. You're all adults." That was the assignment. My father slammed his hand on the table. "You do not ambush this family in my house." "Your house," I said quietly. "The tax shortfall last year came from me. The roof repair came from me. Luke's truck payment came from me. Your prescriptions, when insurance lagged, came from me. Every time any of you needed saving, who did you call?" No one answered. "Me," I said. Then I tapped my phone and played the audio. Vanessa's voice filled the dining room. "Emma does that frozen little girl thing because men panic when kids look breakable. It's manipulative as hell." Nobody moved. The second clip played. "Once we're married, Oliver's priorities will change. The kid can sulk at Rachel's." Rachel went white. "The third, kids adjust. Or they get sidelined. Same difference." Denise sat back. Luke muttered, "Jesus." My mother began to cry softly, helplessly, the way she always did when consequences finally arrived. I looked around the table. "This," I said, "is the woman you defended. This is the woman you praised while she stole from my business and targeted my daughter. And this is the family that helped her build the story that Emma was the problem." Rachel stared at the screenshots in her hand. "You knew?" she asked my mother. My mother said nothing. Outside, headlights swept across the front window. Right on time. A black car pulled into the driveway. I looked at Emma. "Get your coat, sweetheart." She stood immediately, too quickly, like she'd been ready to leave for months. Vanessa finally broke, "You can't humiliate me like this," and walk out. I met her eyes. "The engagement is over. Your access to my house, Accounts, devices, and business is gone. Your things are being inventoried. If anything is missing, Greg files in the morning. My father thundered, "If you leave over this, don't expect things to stay the same." I picked up the folder and hard drive. "That," I said, "is the most honest thing you've said all night." Emma came back in her coat. I put my hand on her shoulder. At the doorway, I turned once and looked at the spilled wine, the open folder, the faces of people who had mistaken my patience for permission. "I am done paying for the privilege of being disrespected," I said. "And I am never again asking my daughter to endure cruelty so adults can feel comfortable." Then, I took her out into the cold. In the back seat of the car, Emma asked one question. "Am I in trouble?" "No," I said immediately. "None of that was your fault." She nodded, but the look on her face told me something terrible. She was still checking whether she believed me. When we got home, Greg was already there. Locks changed, codes reset, access revoked, Vanessa's things boxed under witness inventory. Marisol had secured every business account. Greg walked me through the next steps at my kitchen island. Demand letter. Civil action if necessary. Child documentation in case Rachel or my parents tried to rewrite what had happened. A therapist recommendation for Emma. Then he said quietly, "Go talk to your daughter before she decides your silence means uncertainty." He was right. Emma sat under a blanket in the den, hot chocolate cooling untouched in her hands. "Did Grandma mean those things?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She nodded. Then she asked the question I deserved. "Why didn't you stop it sooner?" I could have lied. Could have said I didn't know. But kids know the difference between guilt and honesty. "I should have," I said. "I saw enough before tonight. I'm sorry." She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Okay." That one word hurt more than shouting would have. The next week unfolded exactly the way Greg predicted. Vanessa emailed first. She was heartbroken by the misunderstanding. She had never intended harm. The wine had been an emotional reaction in a highly provocative situation. Greg answered with 6 cold paragraphs and a repayment deadline. My mother left a voicemail crying that I had humiliated the family. Nothing in the message was about Emma. I deleted it. Luke texted that I had blown up Christmas over drama. I blocked him. Rachel came by 3 days later with a bag of new clothes for Emma, and the exhausted expression of a woman who had finally realized neutrality had put her on the wrong side. "I was wrong," she said. "About what?" "About that night. About Emma. About all of it." She didn't become a hero after that, but she did start trying. Therapy appointments. No more excuses for my parents. No more pretending Emma was too sensitive. It wasn't redemption, but it was movement. Vanessa, meanwhile, tried to shift public opinion. She told people I was unstable, controlling, obsessed with money. Suggested I had staged the confrontation. Suggested Emma had behavioral issues everyone was too afraid to name. I made one public statement and only one. A short video from my brewery office. Calm. Brief. No names. I said false claims were circulating. I said the relationship had ended because of documented financial misconduct and conduct toward my daughter that I considered unacceptable and irreversible. I said legal counsel was involved. Then I said the sentence that traveled farther than I expected. Any adult who needs a child to become smaller, quieter, or ashamed in order to feel respected is not misunderstood. They are unsafe. That was enough. People understood. Some reached out privately. A few admitted they had seen Vanessa's edge before. My cousin Jenna apologized for staying quiet too long. I didn't comfort her. Remorse is not the same as repair. At the brewery, something changed in me too. The energy I had spent managing family chaos came back. Sales improved. I expanded our small batch line. In the spring, I launched a barrel-aged stout called Stillness. Only Emma and I knew why that name mattered. We moved that summer. Not far. Just far enough. A brick house with morning light in the kitchen and a smaller dining room, which turned out to be a blessing. Smaller tables leave less room for performance. Emma painted her room deep blue-green and hung string lights around the ceiling. One evening, while unpacking books, she said, It feels quieter here. It does, I said. She put 2 paper stars in the window and added, I don't miss Grandma. I believed her. My father mailed a letter months later demanding I stop punishing the family and warning me that someday Emma would understand the damage I had caused. I handed the letter to Greg and never responded. My mother texted on my birthday. I pray your heart softens. I replied, wrong address. That was the last message I sent her. The next Thanksgiving, I didn't go to my parents' house. I smoked a turkey in the backyard, made too much food, and invited exactly the people I trusted to sit near my daughter. Rachel, because Emma asked. Greg, Marisol, Jenna, because guilt doesn't fix anything. But sometimes, honesty is a place to start. No one criticized Emma's tone. No one watched her like she was a problem to be solved. No one asked her to smile more, speak differently, shrink herself, or absorb adult ugliness with grace. It was the easiest holiday meal I could remember. People still ask sometimes whether I regret how hard I cut everyone off, whether I think blood should count for more, whether I'll reconcile when enough time has passed. No, because time does not improve people who only miss access. I learned something too late, but not too late to matter. I was never wrong for helping my family. I was wrong for confusing being needed with being loved. I am not guilty because they used me. I am guilty only of how long I let them teach my daughter that survival was the same as peace. That ended the night Vanessa threw wine in Emma's face, and the room tried to blame the child for it. I changed my number, changed my locks, changed the shape of my life. The brewery grew. Emma laughs more now. Real laughter, sudden and bright. Not the careful kind she used to offer when she was making sure the room was safe first. A few weeks ago, I was closing up at the brewery when I found a note tucked beside the chalkboard where we list seasonal pours. In Emma's handwriting, it said, "Quiet isn't weakness." I left it there. That Christmas dinner used to replay in my mind as a scene of humiliation. Now I remember it differently. Not as the night my family broke, as the night I finally stopped handing them the tools. I didn't forgive. I didn't go back. I didn't reopen the door just because they shared my blood. I chose my daughter. I chose the truth. I chose the life that came after both. And it turns out peace is not dramatic at all. It's a changed lock, a smaller table, a safer home, a child who no longer freezes when adults raise their voices, and a man who finally learned that freedom costs less than family, like that.